Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Sports. I am Ralph Lavella.
And I'm Ron Sen. Well, it may not be Thanksgiving, but what a sports news cornucopia we have. And starting off, the Cleveland Browns. Scott Ensminger, a 55-year-old gentleman, unfortunately was on his deathbed and he came up with a last wish. And his wish, he wanted 6 pallbearers from the Cleveland Browns because he said, "I want you to let me down one more time." So the Browns actually said they would send a representative, but I don't think they're going to have 6 Cleveland Brown players there. Now, however, the National Football League hasn't exactly shined this week and lately, as when we used to say the Patriots killed the opposition, we didn't mean it literally.
Oh, I know. It's just unbelievable the way it's going there. You know, Hernandez, more people are blaming Belichick now than Kraft. I mean, they're not blaming Kraft. They're saying Belichick should have known. I know a lot of players. Now it's coming out that Welker had problems with him, too. And it's just a bad situation.
Well, there's a program on television called Necessary Roughness and about a fictional National Football League team. And that organization has one fixer. He does investigations. He fixes problems. He's kind of a underworld type figure, but works for the team. And I imagine that role grew out of something that most of the teams probably have. They have somebody who does background checks, who fixes problems. You know, if somebody gets in a bar fight, he probably drops off tickets and, you know, generally tries to keep the problem under wraps. But I don't think anybody had any conception to the extent that Aaron Hernandez was a troubled guy, and only time is going to tell how many bodies there are out there.
And what about like Light? You know, Light couldn't stand him. You know, you're hearing these different stories. A lot of his teammates didn't like him. And you tell me Belichick didn't understand this? Maybe have him meet with a psychiatrist, although that wouldn't have helped.
Well, I think when you take a guy who has been productive and he's received a fortune from the Patriots, you'd think that maybe he'd be able to keep his nose clean, but obviously that couldn't happen.
How about his interview after he got all the money? Thanked the Krafts, thanked Belichick, said he's going to be, you know, a great player for years to come. He really appreciates what they've done for him. He's grown up. He has a child now. He knew what he was doing.
Obviously he has a severe personality disorder. He's probably an antisocial personality at best. And basically, allegedly, he made light of the whole episode when the police came to him.
But you talk about someone who can't rationalize. I mean, you talk about making that type of a decision when he has everything. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, in 1998, a book was written called Pros and Cons, where the authors used the Freedom of Information Act to go to 49 states, I think it was Utah that they couldn't get information on, and evaluate every player in the National Football League. And they found out about 20% of the players had either a felony arrest or conviction. There's a whole chapter, for example, on Corey Dillon. There's a lot of information there about Dennis Green. And you have violent men playing a violent game. And, you know, obviously some of that violence that works in the National Football League. Now, I don't know which guys on the Patriots might be the biggest trouble, but, you know, more recently it's Alfonso Denard, who was already on probation for an assault on a police officer, and now he's arrested for a DUI. I don't know what the consequence of that if you're already on probation is.
Well, the key is that they were talking on a sports show this morning when I was going to work, and they really didn't understand it. If he's on probation, usually he got a 30-day committed sentence. So usually he would get something like 6 months in the House of Correction, 30 days to serve, balance suspended to probation. So whatever his original sentence was, he could get if they violate him. Now, say he got a 60-day sentence with 30 days to serve and the other 30 days suspended for 2 years. I know he was on probation for 2 years. You know, so it's not like what people think, oh, he can get up to 2.5 years or 2 years. It's what the judge gave him for an actual sentence. Probably got 6 months, something like that, with 30 days to serve. So if the probation violates him, not only is he going to do the 30 days that he has to serve in March, he could do the rest of the time. He could do 6 months.
Well, and you don't know how many players also get into problems, and because they're a professional athlete or a top-flight college athlete, somebody fixes it so they don't really get the full brunt of the law.
But you know what else, Ron? I always thought that, you know, it was people that didn't have money, that, you know, struggling, poor people, they, you know, tend to commit crimes more and more. But Bill Crosby, what he said, you know, if you're a person who's a bad person, doesn't matter how much money you have, you're just going to be a bad person that's worth a lot of money. You're going to remain a bad person. That's kind of weird because I didn't think that way. I thought if you were having a tough time in life, couldn't afford certain things, and then you made it big, that it would change you. But he said it wouldn't. So what do you think about that?
I don't know. I guess that's the nature versus nurture thing, where you have some people that are able to turn their life around, but that's probably a minority. In the book Freakonomics, they write at the final chapter about two gentlemen. One went to exclusive private schools in the Chicago area, ultimately went to Harvard, and had a very successful academic career. The other one was living in the projects in Orlando, had an alcoholic father who beat his mother, and everything that could go wrong for him went wrong. Now, the first one was Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber.
Yeah.
The second one was, I believe his name is Charles Ogletree, who's a professor of law at Harvard Law School. Now, obviously those make for great stories because it's the exception to the rule, where the troubled youth turns out well and the advantaged youth turns out to be a disaster. But, I think when you see a lot of people, nobody sees more people who have trouble than you. So you must see a lot of repeat offenders or repeat business where people just can't stay out of trouble.
And they don't have, it's sad, like I'll go up to the police station and bail someone out, and there'll be someone there that owes $200. And a lot of, with the economy, and I'll bail them out, and even if they don't have money to get
Right.
bailed out, my fee, I'll still let them go because of the money situation. But there are people who not only do they not have $40, they don't have any friends who can give them $40, a family. They would be stuck in jail from Friday night till Monday morning because maybe they get called, charged with trespassing or being a disorderly person.
Well, and the other issue for the National Football League is for any big business, and then we're talking about almost a $10 billion business, you're interested in protecting your brand. You don't want to have your employees, your high-profile, out-front guys on the front page for gun violations, sexual assaults, all kinds of misbehavior, DUIs. I think the Broncos had 2 front office people, if I'm not mistaken. It's just bad business. And the National Football League, I believe, is going to put into effect a fine system where, depending on the number of employees you have, you're going to have escalating fines for the organization. So the organization is going to be encouraged to really avoid these bad actors.
Yeah, and a pro coach will do almost anything to get a player. They'll take the chance, and I don't know if they're lying to the owner like Kraft. I don't know. Belichick knew a lot more about Hernandez than Kraft knew. Did he tell him? Belichick was seeing Hernandez every day in practice.
Well,
He's got all these tattoos all over his body. Kraft had to see that too.
Well,
That's
back in the day, the Patriots drafted Christian Peter, who was a troubled Nebraska lineman, and Myra Kraft told her husband she didn't want him even to show up at training camp, and they just let it go. Now, since then, you've had Ocho Cinco, who's got issues, and Albert Hainsworth.
Oh, Hainsworth.
That
was ridiculous, Hainsworth.
So you've got a history now where the Patriots are willing to take chances because they want to win. And other teams, they take chances because they want to win. There's the Adam Pac-Man Jones, Ray Lewis got away with whatever his involvement was in I believe it was a murder. And I'm not saying all these people are guilty because they're walking the streets. But I just think that you're more likely to get a break if you're a professional athlete who's well represented. I don't think Hernandez is going to get a break, though.
No, and I think then they have to cut Dennett. I wouldn't give him a break. He beats up a police officer last year, gets a lenient sentence, 30 days committed, which they're going to let him do in March, on probation, and a knucklehead. You talk about common sense. I know you, talking to you, people with common sense, you're not going to drive while under the influence of liquor. You're not going to drive if you have one. I know you wouldn't even have a beer if you had to drive.
You're right, I don't.
But you're using common sense. Why aren't these people using common sense? I even see people that I know through the court system that at times, even will have 1 or 2 drinks. But, in the times, I don't think they're using their common sense. even though they don't believe they're under the influence. But
Well, I think that people who are celebrities sometimes feel that they're above the law, so that if they get in trouble, they'll, Reese Witherspoon, for example.
well, and then you have these high school guys. Most of these football players, pro football players, were on steroids in high school. And let's be
True.
real. They're on
Right.
steroids. They're getting away with just about everything. The coaches are looking the other way, and because they're a better football player. It starts. Where does it start from?
Well, we'll change gears, and the Celtics are in the Orlando Summer League with some young players, but that's the minor story. The big story being, of course, that Doc Rivers has flown the coop along with the elite of his coaching staff, like Kevin Eastman in Clipperland, and Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Terry are, gone, and the Celtics have 9 draft choices in the next 5 years.
And I'm happy with everything that's happened. I'm happy for everyone who left. I'm happy for the situation the Celtics have right now. I love it. I just love the situation right now compared to where we were when it ended.
And we're going to enjoy the season far more watching guys like Kelly Olynyk and maybe Phil Pressey off the bench as the point guard developing, as opposed to watching, NBA dinosaurs in their aging years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for Pierce and Garnett. I'm hoping that they win the championship.
Sure.
With Brooklyn. I mean, people aren't looking at this. If things go right, you have Williams as the point guard, Lopez at the center, you got Johnson, you have Garnett's going to add so much to their defense. Even Pierce is smart defensively, not as quick. Plus, Pierce averaged 19 points a game during the season and in the playoffs. With a team like Brooklyn, he's not going to have to average 19 points for them to be successful. But I'll tell you, if I was Miami, I'd be worried. Because if things pop the right way for Brooklyn, it's great for those two guys. It's great for Rivers. He's going out to the Clippers now. I didn't want Rivers coaching here anymore because he doesn't want to work with young players. I knew that when he started off at the Celtics, when I had those 12-game packages. That's when I loved going to watch the Celtics with Perkins and West and Allen and all those younger guys. It was fun watching them. I might get another 12-game package with Olynyk.
And they have a great coach in Brad Stevens. Yeah. Now, we're not saying that he's going to have a great record right away, but he took, I won't say scrubs, but unheralded players and went to the national championship twice in major college basketball. Going from the Horizon League to the national championship in consecutive years borders on miraculous.
We were talking about 3 weeks ago about this type of coach we'd want. It's him. Young, smart coach. And you were telling me earlier what he did, was it today when he went to Rondo's camp?
Right. Well, obviously there are challenges for him. He has to learn the NBA game, which is different from the college game. And he also already said, I'm going to adjust the terminology so that I'm using the NBA terminology for these guys, not so that they have to learn from me. He has a system as a group. It has a lot of screens away from the ball, and he likes to pop the big guys out to take open jump shots. Well, that should work for Sullinger and Olynyk because they can both hit from the outside. And, there's a lot of things that have to happen. He has to have a great relationship with Rondo. I think that Jeff Green has to be a reliable scorer and yet not, if you'll pardon the expression, be the face of the team because Rondo wouldn't be able to deal with that because Rondo wants to be the man. Now, if Rondo can't deal with the situation as it is, then I think he'll get dealt.
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, they're not going to wait too long. I mean, Rondo better get along with Stevens. Stevens has a 6-year contract, and half the fans in Boston want to see them trade Rondo. But, I think if Rondo comes in with a different attitude, I mean, you saw them play the second half of the year, some of that, half of that, I think like 30 games, they were playing real good basketball.
Well, I think most of the younger players on the team, the Sullingers, the Courtney Lees, Bradley, they've been around during the time Stevens has been successful, and they know what he's done. I wasn't too enthusiastic about Brandon Bass, who kind of was surly at best, and he said, I'll worry about myself. I'm not really worried about anything else right now. That wasn't the real attitude, so I wouldn't be shocked to see Bass gone too.
Well, Bass, he's the type of player that's not going to add much to a team. He'll go out there, play pretty good defense. He hits the open shot, can't make his own shot. He's got to be open to hit that shot. But I like the team. I mean, people say, well, they got to get rid of Rondo so that you want to get a lottery pick. Well, as a fan, I want to be entertained, number one. So if you have Rondo at point, Bradley at 2, you knew Bradley can't play the 1. They tried him when Rondo went down. He couldn't do it. Bradley's much better at playing with Rondo. And then Lee, who I really like, will be the third guard. You have Olnick coming in with Sullinger and Green. You know, who else?
Yeah,
and then they got all these draft picks.
Well, and Rivers soured on Lee, so it just didn't work out. Lee had a lot of trouble shooting three-pointers. I think he was less than 20% for the entire season.
Well, he got down on him after he got hurt because he was playing good basketball.
Right, and he's a decent guard. So, you know, and they've got guys coming in who have some talent. You know, Wallace is not a terrible player.
No.
You know,
Humphreys, I don't know if he's going to play.
Oh, I don't know what.
I heard that, you know, he's on his last year, so he may not. There's word that he may not play for them. I don't know if they're going to trade him or whatever. But I mean, I like the team. It's going to be fun to watch them play. Again, I gave up my 12-game packages when they got Garnett and Allen. People thought I was crazy. But I didn't want to go see the Celtics win by 20, 30 points every game with that powerful team. I want to go see young players play. I mean, that's what I really enjoy.
Well, you really enjoy watching quality basketball.
Well, Pierce. Even Pierce was all. I love Pierce and Garnett.
But, you know, obviously back to Summer League, some of the highlights are on TV. I know you've seen some of the games. I have not seen any games except for the highlights. I like Olenek a lot. He can really handle the ball. To me, he's a lot like Dirk Nowitzki. Not the same talent level, but a lighter version of that.
Yeah, you see him. Know what he's real good at? He's good at picking. Like you teach the girls all the time. You're talking about pick and pop, pick and roll and all that. Seeing where the defensive play goes. He's unbelievable at that. And he's so wide. He comes out and sets a pick. And a lot of times he'll pick and he'll pop to get him the ball. He's wide open for three. If they charge him, attack him too fast, close down too fast, he'll just go by and pull up or take it all the way in because he can finish with either hand.
Yeah, I think the pick and pop game will be huge for him. And Rondo will be happy because he comes off the screen. They switch, they drop it back, so Rondo gets an assist without doing too much work. So
you see Iverson?
Oh, Iverson's a big guy.
Oh, God. Is he huge? He takes up a lot of room.
Iverson's biggest highlight on YouTube is he's setting a screen on a guy. The guy is like knocked out, and it was a clean screen. There wasn't anything else. But Iverson is a guy who's 24 years old. He's been around a while. He's working on his game so he can make the open outside shot. He's not going to be a star player, but I think he can be a 20-minute-a-game guy eventually.
He's good at setting picks. You know, he'd be another Perkins, taller Perkins.
Maybe a better outside shooter, too.
And he's, to me, he's ahead of Melo, Fab Melo. I don't know if Melo needs a couple more years, but you can see the difference.
And I'm very happy for Brian Scalabrine, who's assumed a job on, whose staff is he on? Kenny Smith, I think.
Oh, he's out at Golden State.
Yeah. So Scalabrine, I love him as an announcer, but that's not where he's going to be an NBA coach someday, and he's going to be a good one. He's a very knowledgeable basketball. How do you hang around 11 years in the NBA with marginal skills? You've got to know what you're doing. Well, we'll be right back.
On and off the court, Visionary Basketball Group delivers programs that empower players with skills for athletic and personal success. Our players undergo learning experiences that position them for positive lifelong achievement on and off the court.
Hello, my name is Anthony Taylor, founder of Visionary Basketball Group, VBG. It's a year-round basketball player development organization ranging from preschool to college and professional level, girls and boys. We cater to all skill levels, starting from beginner, intermediate, and advanced. One of the biggest things that we have is our coaching staff, who do a phenomenal job at mentoring the players on a regular basis with the training, the teaching, and the knowledge. We operate 7 days a week. We offer over 30 sessions, and we're considered one of the top comprehensive basketball player development organizations in New England. And another key aspect that we do is that we have kids coming from all different areas, urban, suburban communities, uniting as one. And that's what makes VBG a phenomenal organization that helps kids gain confidence, leadership, discipline, self-esteem. And if you have a chance, come down and see what we do at Visionary Basketball Group.
VBG player athletes are rising stars in elementary, middle school, high school, and college basketball. We apply the same approach to training with every participant at VBG and produce players who are prepared for maximum performance. Visionary Basketball not only provides programs for individuals, we can also come to your town, school, or any institution to customize a structured program for your team or basketball organization. For more information, please log on to our website, www.visionarybasketball.com, or drop into our Athletic Performance Center at 152 Tremont Street, Melrose, Mass. BBG, complete your vision.
Welcome back. Tonight, for our sports conversation, we have the queen of the keyboard, Jen Gentile. I've seen pictures of her and her family from every venue except the space shuttle over the last month.
It's been quite a summer.
Welcome, Jen.
Well, thank you.
Talk to us about how sports ended up
Sure,
this
yeah.
year.
Well, actually, one of my last pieces this spring was sort of a capsule of the whole season and what a successful school year it was athletically for Melrose High School. With the exception, obviously volleyball being the crown jewel of, achievements, there was across the board a number of successes this season. A number of state champions were crowned. A lot of teams made playoffs. Really a lot of success all around. Obviously, the boys basketball team was another thrilling season, first undefeated team since 1989. And the volleyball was, graduates a number of seniors. I think you guys know the number, but is it 8? 6 seniors?
7, right?
7.
Yeah, and so it was really, it was sort of a question of whether or not Melrose can almost rebound from losing all the senior talent this year. There's going to be a lot of promise with the hockey team. A lot of underclassmen are coming back, and they're very talented. The football team, same idea. But there are going to be some teams that lost so many great seniors, and it's almost uncanny how much talent is really leaving. Olivia Downey, she's a multi-sport athlete, a state champion, 2-time state champion. Bianca St. Fleur also. The track team had an unbelievable season once again. Annalise Zabari became a state champ in I think it was the triple jump. Just overall, the girls basketball, Kalo Island had a great season. The lacrosse team did okay, but Matt Finikos was the state champion in wrestling. So it was just a really good season overall. On the spring sports side, I would say it was a quiet season. There was not a lot of playoff action. The boys lacrosse team managed to get into the playoffs, as did both tennis teams. And they advanced one round, and it kind of wrapped up quietly. But it's not any reflection on the student body at all. It was just a really good, solid sport year and a lot of memorable moments.
Well, certainly, Annalise Zabari has an interesting resume here.
Yeah.
Although she's not the linchpin of the volleyball team, she
No.
was on a state champion. She finished second all around in gymnastics in the state. And won a state championship in track and field. That's pretty impressive, especially if you're only a junior.
Right.
The volleyball state championship.
That's right.
Yeah, and she was a starter. She was a volleyball starter. She's my pick to be the state champion next year for all around in Massachusetts, and then a state champion in track. So she's really such a unique athlete. No matter what sport she partakes in next season, that team has a better chance of victory with her being on it. And the other one being Franzi Perot. He's also, I believe he may be playing soccer.
He's going to play soccer?
I think so. I think they're lifting that rule, but it's nothing official yet. So his presence on the field is obviously going to help the team. And then basketball, if he comes back, it's going to be, he'll have another great season.
Right. If we heard anything about if he has a soccer scholarship,
No,
whether he'll be able to
nothing
play
yet.
basketball.
No, I haven't heard. This is around the time that you do hear things, and nothing's been announced yet. But we'll know soon enough, I guess.
Well, he's one of the top players in the state,
He
right?
is. Yeah, he is.
I think he could even get a scholarship in basketball. I think he's that good.
I think he is too. I really do.
He's
I
tremendous.
think he really showed himself towards the second half of the season.
Well, I think he's
Just
been the
really-
best player the last 2 years on
Yeah,
the team.
yeah.
Even better than Adams when Adams was here.
Yeah.
Everybody says Adams. Perot's the guy that made the team.
Yeah.
I mean, he made them click.
And he's just a fast person. He's just his speed and agility is just what sets him
Yeah.
apart.
Oh, and we wanted to bring up a look back over a decade or so in the sports that we know. So we don't know anything about golf. So if we said who's the best golfer in the last 10 years in Melrose, we have no clue. And we wanted to set up whom we thought were the top players in football, girls and boys basketball, and volleyball, as well as an underrated player. And it's all arbitrary as far as, our goal is not to make people unhappy. I'm sure we'll forget somebody, and we could overrate somebody because we really like the way they play. And as far as what's underrated, I don't know. To me, if somebody is a all-state or all-scholastic player, they're not underrated. They were recognized for what they did. So you could be a terrific player. For example, Shea Petty, fantastic player on the cusp of playing in the WNBA. She might have been underrated, but she was well recognized, so it would be hard to underrate her under those criteria.
Exactly.
Well, let's start with girls basketball. Well, since you've been watching girls basketball, how long have you
Okay.
been watching it?
I've been watching only 5 years. Hannah Brickley is the best I've seen.
All right.
All right, so you go back 5, and
Yeah.
we'll go back. I'll go back
go back
to 13.
Yeah, a little bit longer. And again, not that my daughters would be among the top 5 players in girls basketball, because I would not rate them in that echelon. But I'm not considering my own kids for either best players or underrated anything. So in girls basketball, I think you have to go with the all-time career scoring leader, Shea Petty, as your top player, all Atlantic 10 MVP of the A10, and named one of the top 52 players in the United States in her senior year, has played professionally overseas, and was the last cut of the Washington Mystics this year. So, her basketball resume is impeccable. My second player would be Shannon Kerwin, who was Gatorade Player of the Year, played at Bentley, had an outstanding career. Third would be Kiana Copeland, another fantastic player. I had fourth, Hannah Brickley, who was all scholastic in 2 sports. And fifth would be Megan Kerwin, who was a Middlesex League MVP. Now for my underrated player, one of my favorite players of all time in Melrose, part of the Melrose Alliance Against Violence, it would be Lindley D'Amato.
Last year's freshman coach.
So Lindley always played hard. I think she might have played a little bit in people's shadows, but terrific player, offensive player, defensive player, a great young lady. So that's my view on basketball.
It's funny because we're so close. We're very close.
I bet.
Shea Petty, number 1, of
Yeah.
course. No argument over that. Number 2, to me, is Kiana Copeland.
Okay.
She was just unbelievable. She played at Providence, got the scholarship to Providence, played in Europe. Just unbelievable. And I have my thinking, when it comes to girls basketball, I feel I know a lot more than even the athletic director and other people that have been involved. And I know what's been going on over the last 12 years in basketball. And believe me, Kiana Copeland's number 2 could have been battling for number 1 if she was in a different situation. Shannon would be number 3. But, you changed my thinking. I had
Hannah?
No, I had her sister, Megan, as 4 and Hannah 5.
Okay.
But I see what you're thinking. That's close between Hannah and Megan. Megan was MVP of the league for her senior year. She had a great senior year. She was very good with Hannah's class that was below her.
Yep.
And I love Lindley, but my underrated player would be my favorite player of all time, Colleen Hanscom.
I was just going to say Colleen Hanscom. That was my choice.
She's been my favorite. I mean, I've loved her since I coached her in the 7th grade. She was just probably the best athlete I've ever coached.
Yeah.
When you talk about giving 100% every second of the game, I mean, it's the same thing with Shannon Kerwin, too. She gave 100% every second. But still, that's the way it would go with me. With Lindley right there. So
those are good choices.
Did a very good job.
Very good choices.
Well, there've been a lot of terrific players, as we mentioned. Kayla Weiland would be in there but again,
Another great kid.
You're an MVP of the small division. You can't
Can't be
say
underrated.
she's underrated.
But if you're talking about great kids and great talent, Kayla Weiland would be right there.
Yeah.
Always got a smile for you.
Yeah.
All right, boys basketball.
Well, didn't you want to name them?
The 5.
Your
I
favorite
can't fill 5.
Well, who's your top 3?
Well, you guys covered in the glory days, and
yeah.
it's been kind of a couple of seasons of struggle. So my picks would be a little.
Hannah.
Hannah. That's it. Hannah was for me. I think Laura Irwin was playing back then.
Yeah,
I thought
she was good. Very good.
Colleen. And Leah Lamone. No, that wasn't. Was it Leah Lamone? She had a good first
good
season.
sophomore year.
Sophomore year.
She played with that
yes,
real
I
good
liked
team.
watching her. Yeah, she had a good 3. But your choices are much better than mine because you've had a longer reign of fandom.
But a lot of real good
Okay.
talent there.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Now, for boys basketball, I would say the top player I've seen who was not at Melrose for a long time was Jalen Adams. Jalen had skills that'll translate well to Division I basketball. I wasn't always wild about the entirety of his game, but certainly a dynamic scorer, could really shoot, take the ball to the basket, quick as lightning. Second, Andy Skoka,
Yes.
dominant inside player, having a nice career at Bryant. Third would be Franz D. Perot, who we've mentioned. Fourth, Matt Sherlock, who had a terrific campaign this year and had both offensive and defensive skills. And fifth would be Pete Pisano, who was Pete was a really strong force, kind of a wide body,
Wow.
undersized.
Football killed Pete.
Well,
He gained like 40 pounds. If
he-
he didn't gain the 40 pounds, he would have been unbelievable in basketball.
but he still had
He
a
had the
very
legs.
very
Yeah,
solid
He did.
campaign.
He would have been great in basketball, though.
Right. And as far as underrated, I would have Sam Gentile, who really was an extremely solid player during his time. Didn't get the kind of recognition as some of the other players, but was vital to the success of the team the last couple of years.
Yeah, I wouldn't include Adams. He left the school, so I wouldn't even. He went to private school. That's fine with him, but I wouldn't put him in this class. But I would go. I agree with you. Skoka was the best player I've seen in Melrose in all the years. I've been watching it for probably 13 years, boys basketball, and Skoka by far was the best basketball player. We'll talk about football later, but number 2 is Perot. I love Perot, Franzi Perot. He just does so many things out there that people, I think they're starting to realize it, but I think he's scholarship material, just a great
He is.
player, and to me, he was the key to the team the last 2 years. The third is Overland from the team that was undefeated with Pappas. Overland.
John Overland. yeah.
John Overland is number 3.
Well, that was a long time
That
ago.
was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Was it the
Yeah.
That's since I seen him.
He
I saw him
graduated around
play.
me, yeah.
I saw Overland play. I saw Slattery on the same team who was
Oh,
a
they-
junior
yeah.
that year. He would be number 4. Number 5 would be Mayetta. He was a point guard after them.
Right. Oh, Justin Mayetta.
Justin
Yeah, I
Mayetta
remember him, yeah.
was a point guard. And who was the player that I
Who
was?
was your underrated player?
Yeah.
My underrated. Oh, Byrne from the same team, the center.
Chucky Byrne?
Chucky
Yeah,
Byrne. He's a police
yeah.
officer.
Of
in Melrose.
course, yeah.
He was.
He was
I mean, they
great.
they were 18-0 that year.
Yes.
They had an unbelievable team. They played real
I
good
don't go back
basketball.
that far.
John Overland is Zoe's father on my team.
Well, I don't go back that far. That's when they had to take the ball out of the peach basket after every basket.
But I'll tell you, that's when I just moved to Melrose. I loved watching that team
That
play.
was a fun team.
I mean,
The best
Byrne and
team since
Slattery
this
up
year's
front.
team. Absolutely.
And they had Overland. They had the point guard. I think it was a Mecco student.
I actually
Morgan.
Sean Morgan.
He played football too.
Sean
He was a
Morgan.
great. He was
Yep.
a great split end.
It was good.
But and Byrne definitely the most
Yeah.
underrated. I mean, he just dominated the boards.
Sure.
So
Okay.
And I would say, well, my choices don't go back as far as the '89 team. I watched them. I was a huge fan of them. They were inducted into the Hall of Fame. I'm going to go back about as far as Andy Skoka period. But I think that's probably where it starts. That's really where the basketball team started their evolution.
Right.
Most of the talent that you could talk of in modern day comes from, in the last 3 or 4 years. So if you had asked me last year, I would have said Andy Skoka, absolutely, number 1. But having seen Jalen Adams and Franzi, I'd have to say Jalen Adams, just to be, he did some pretty mesmerizing things on the. He didn't really have a flaw. He was great at 3-pointers. He was great on the, shooting fouls. He just really didn't. He just got it on a level as a freshman that I've never seen. So I would probably say Jalen first, Franzi Perot second, Andy Skoka third, Matt Sherlock 4, and Sam Gentile 5. And my
Those are good
underrated
picks.
player would be, I've always been a big fan of Ryan Joyle. He was,
Oh, yeah,
he was
yeah.
a good,
Very
and
good teammate.
He really held on to, as the team got very competitive, he was sort of like the captain of the floor. He made, I was a very big fan of his.
Well, on volleyball, volleyball has been not only successful but received lots of recognition with all scholastics and all state players. And I have it easy because I get to skip out on my own daughters, and so I have I can pick
Well, I
other.
can include 'em.
I can pick. I can pick other people's children, which is a lot more fun anyway. To me, the queen of the volleyball court historically is still Hannah. Hannah played front row, back row, dynamic player. Continues to be successful playing at Trinity. Has been player of the week, and just a fantastic player. Second would be Brooke Bell, another terrific player. Set her on the state championship team. She's done everything you can do at the high school level for volleyball. Third was Andrea Basteri.
You didn't write them down, did you?
Yeah, of course I write people down. And I didn't see Andrea play, but obviously I know how dominant player she was. Fourth is Sarah McGowan, another all-state player from this season. Colleen Hanscom, as already mentioned, and again, all-state player. It's hard to dismiss people who've been recognized as all-state. And lastly, Marianne Foley, who had a terrific career and was, probably the number one player on the team that won the first sectional championship for Melrose. Now, the most underrated player, it's a tie for me between the two Jens, which is Jen Kane, who's going to Merrimack, and Jenny Cohane, who was really a terrific player and had a lengthy volleyball resume.
No, did you do 6 plus 1? Or?
6 plus 1.
Why don't you go next?
Mine are very similar to Ron's. I didn't get a chance to see Andrea Basteri or Marianne Foley play, so I'd like to put them on the list, but I can't. So I'm just going to go with who I've been familiar with over the years, and there's been so much talent. Number one, I agree, Hannah Brickley. She's just, she, like you said, she did it all. Fantastic, and I know she's playing now still. Number two, I would say Brooke Bell for sure. She's, she broke records. She did everything. Just a real experienced player. Sarah McGowan, number three. And I would put Athena Ziavros. I was a big fan of Athena. I thought she was fantastic. She was a good hitter. And then number five, Jen Kane. Jen Kane was also someone that her serving was really good over the season, and just very athletic. Great leaping ability, tireless. She seems like a tireless player out there. Underrated player is actually somebody current. I would say Cassidy Barbaro. She has a really outstanding serve that's going to really help the team next year. I think they're going to rely on her a lot. I can't say that she single-handedly won the playoffs for us, but I'm sure you remember the runs that she went on with her serving that really made a lot of difference in some of these sets. So I expect to see good things for her next year too.
I'm a little different. Number one, Hannah Brickley, by far. Well, not really by far, because I think Paula Sen was right there with her all-around play, her serving. But I would say Hannah 1, Paula Sen 2, Andrea Basteri 3. I saw her; she was unreal. Andrea. Karen Sen 4. Colleen Hanscom 5. McGowan 6. And the most underrated player by far is Jen Kane. She should have been all-league. She should have been all-state.
All-state, yeah.
But he couldn't have 3 players all-state. But to me, between Brooke, Jen, and McGowan, all 3 of them. But the funny thing about this year's team, none of these players would have been as good if they didn't have the other players. They had a back row that was the best back row I've ever seen.
Matter of fact, I was going to say Amanda Comito for an underrated player.
Look at
She's
Jill
fantastic.
McGinnis.
Yep, Jill McGinnis.
I mean,
yep.
every one of you look at Jill McGinnis, you look at Amanda Comito, you look at Jen Kane in the back row, you look at Nolan in the back row, Barbara in the back row. You have that back row, which was the best back row by far they've ever had.
Yep.
Made it much easier for the setter and the front row. And then the setter, Brooke, made it much easier for the front row and the back row. And then the front row was unbelievable. But none of those girls would have been as good as they were if it wasn't for the rest of the team.
Yeah.
That you talk about a team, the whole team should have been the MVP as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. Yeah, and you can't pick everybody, but every single one of them, without one, it wouldn't have worked.
Most people didn't see Andrea Basteri play. I saw her play. I mentioned it at the banquet. She's a taller McGowan, quicker too. She covered the net so well. She had an unbelievable serve that dipped. She was just real good at the net, and she just spiked. She spiked like your daughters.
Well, there is divine providence as we're running out of time here. We'll have to talk football another time, thank goodness. I'm Ron Sen, author of The Simple Guide to Girls Basketball, an Amazon ebook.
And I'm Ralph LaBella. Thank you for coming
Thank you.
in.
Thank you very
And we'll
much.
be right back.
Hey, this is Paul Rabel from the Boston Cannons, and you're watching Let's Talk Sports.
Welcome back. I'm just curious. You draft 18-year-old kids who haven't spent a lot of time being educated or being sophisticated. You pay them millions of dollars, and then when they don't perform up to your expectations, you say, how do we end up with these immature kids? Tyler Seguin, will he be a great player, or is he being thrown under the bus because that's the expedient thing for the Bruins to do? I don't know.
Well, we don't know what's been going on with him, though. Ron.
No,
I mean,
absolutely.
you know, we don't. I mean, they're keeping everything quiet, but you know he's doing stuff. You know he's drinking. You know he's out late at night. You know he's coming to practice. He's not really into it. You have to know that. Why would you give up on a talent like him, 21 years old? And he's been okay. I mean, he had a good year last year. This year during the season he was pretty good. I know he was down on the third line, but I saw him going into the corners. I mean, he doesn't control the corners like some of the other guys do, like Horton and those guys. But again, he's 21, but he had to be doing stuff outside, you know.
No, I don't have any doubt that his professionalism needs to improve, but at the same time, I think when you deal with teenagers and you expect them to be highly mature, it's going to be a rare kid that can do that.
Where are his parents, though? Well, you know, I would, as a parent, I would want to be with him at times on the road. And I mean, were they there?
I was talking to somebody today who had a friend who grew up in Toronto, and they had a kid who was apparently an all-star player in the Toronto region who was about 14 years old. And they went to the family and said, so what's it going to be? Is it going to be hockey, or are you going to get your kid educated and go to college? And they said, what? You know, and it was an either-or proposition. It was full-time hockey or serious student, but they couldn't be both. And the kid opted for a regular life and education and go to college, that kind of thing. So I don't know if we're used to that culture here. Obviously in hockey, you know, we're no hockey experts, but I think in Canada, if you want to be an elite hockey player, you probably, for the most part, have a different track than the average student.
Right, and then when he's going to be going to Dallas, and Dallas he'll be playing on the first line. He'll be on all the power plays. He'll be scoring 30 to 40 goals a year with the talent he has.
And his natural
and
position.
He'll let him freelance more. You know, I mean, he'll be with a couple of players that are hard-nosed players, and they'll tell him that we want you scoring, number one. The number one priority in the Bruins is defense, a two-way hockey. You know, make sure you get back. Make sure you go into the corners and bang. Because you know, you look at the Bruins compared to someone like Chicago and even Pittsburgh, they skate the puck into the end, you know, when they're going down. The Bruins always shoot the puck into the corners, and they go in there and they bang. And they hope,
Right.
I mean, that's their philosophy. And, you know, if it's someone like Seguin, it's not. Someone like Kessel, it's not. Now, Kessel was probably the best player they played against in the playoffs. You know, when
Right.
they got rid of him. Everybody
Yeah.
thought it was a great move getting rid of him and getting Seguin and Hamilton.
Right, and people around here tend to knock players who are less physical. Well, was Wayne Gretzky a bad player because he wasn't a physical player? Of course not. But
Well, it was different hockey then, too.
exactly. So only time will tell, but a lot of other things are going on. Obviously, the Bruins signed Tuukka Rask to an 8-year, $56 million contract. That's a lot of money, and a lot of things can change over a long period of time.
I think it's a good move. It's a good move because what would the $6 million a year? So they pay him $7 million. You know, in another 2 or 3 years, you know, the top goalie is going to be making more than that, and they still have him for $7 million. Now, if they come out and win a Stanley Cup next year or the year after, and they're battling every year because of him, you know, he becomes the top. He is one of the top goalies in the league. I mean, people will look back in 2 years and say, what a deal that was. Right now, people like Felger are knocking him. They're saying it's too long and too much money. But so you'd have to give him at least $6 million.
Well, it's the going rate. You might
Yeah.
say, well, that's too much money. Well, Shane Victorino's getting $13 million, and you know, Jim Palmer is in the Hall of Fame. He won over 250 games. I think he made $2 million during his baseball career.
Right, and it's not like giving a baseball player who's 32 years old, who's on steroids, a 10-year contract, you know, and then by the time they're 36 and they're off the steroids, they're doing nothing. I mean, you get someone like Tuukka Rask who's still going to be young after when the contract's over.
Well, and you see players doing what's best for them. And
I like it.
Well, Horton went to Minnesota, I think, and
what was his problem? He probably didn't like the system.
I think they said he just really wanted a lower key environment, and maybe he just didn't want to be relied upon that much. Ferentz is gone, and who else is gone?
Ferentz was going to go anyway. Yeager may go. They said they may sign him, but since they made that...
Well, they signed a Ginla.
I don't know if Yeager will be...
You know, so
And they have the guy from Sweden they like, too.
Right. So it's professional sports. People come, they go. You know, the issue I was concerned about was Patrice Bergeron was playing in the finals with a broken rib or broken ribs, and ended up seriously hurt at Mass General Hospital.
What would they do? Put the needle through his...
Well, what happens is if you have a broken rib and you have a sharp edge that goes up against your lung, you get a collapsed lung, you could die.
Yeah, but they said it was the needle. Is that right?
Well, they have to put a needle in to re-expand the lung, but they don't do that unless you have a collapsed lung, so-called.
Oh, so the needle, they didn't do it. There was no problem with the needle.
Right. So, you know, that was just a really risky move to play him. Obviously, we don't know what the medical information was. I just don't think there's any way you can protect the player or you know, pad the area to make it safe. Basically, it's the same version of the injury that Drew Bledsoe had, that he had a life-threatening illness at Mass General.
Well, he was bleeding too, right?
Right. You can have bleeding or you can have a collapsed lung. Again, there hasn't been much made of that. We don't know what the medical facts are, you know, and people take a lot of risks when they're playing professional sports. Now, as for the Red Sox, I still can't believe they keep winning. What's the chance you go into Seattle 3 days in a row and the winning team scores 11 runs? First of all, Seattle hardly ever gets 11.
You see the score today?
Well, last I saw it was 7-5. They were losing.
7-7.
And I just don't understand. The one thing that is remarkable to me is David Ortiz is getting better as a hitter as he gets older. He uses the whole field. He has power. He's cut his strikeouts down dramatically. And
he's doing something.
He hits left-handers.
You know he's doing something.
I don't know. He's doing something.
Well, they got 20 players on that list.
Right, and we'll get to that. After the All-Star game, there's going to be all hell break loose.
I'm hoping Ray gets...
Well, you know, Ryan Braun of the Brewers, you know, any player is not going to say anything, and everybody's lawyered up trying to protect their interests. The rumors are Braun from Milwaukee, A-Rod.
100 games for A-Rod.
The guy from the lefty from the Senators, Washington Nationals. Gio Gonzalez, and that's a rumor.
Cano?
No, I haven't heard anything about Cano. And obviously, you know, that's going to be another landmark case if the union can fight it off. Now, the union may just try to fight it off. I saw Nelson Cruz from the Rangers, another top player. Now, the Red Sox have the amazing thing about the Red Sox is Buchholz has been out. Lester is pitching like, you know, a stiff. He's afraid to throw the ball over the plate. But Lackey's become the ace of the staff, pitching really well. And Felix Doubront has thrown 3 runs or less the last 11 starts. And if you said, how did, you know...
And he came in bad shape, too. Remember at the beginning of the year?
Right. So now Doubront has really moved ahead of Lester as far as the effectiveness part of things, which I don't pretend to understand it, but you know, I think Lester's got it's in his head now.
Webster was sent down.
No, Webster, he just leaves too many pitches in the zone right now.
He may not have, well, you know he wasn't ready when they brought him up.
Right. Now, obviously, with Andrew Miller going to the disabled list, that leaves a pretty big hole, but fortunately, Andrew Bailey seems to have straightened himself out miraculously. Tozawa has struggled a little bit, but Uehara has been very good as the closer. Another guy who really doesn't have great stuff, but he puts it in places where it's not easy to hit. I mean, he's got the splitter and the fastball, and he paints.
I think they're going to go in a slump, though, Ron. I mean, they've been playing well, I mean, all year. But I have a feeling, I'm just looking at the team.
I mean, my
And
favorite
things
player.
are going great for them right now.
My favorite player on the team is Nava because the guy comes out of nowhere, the Northern League or something, and he's hitting 295. You know, he does everything he's asked, and
Well, yeah, my favorite player is Pedroia, but I wish I'd love to be able to talk to him and ask him why he stands so far away from the plate. He's reaching for all those outside pitches, and he's just leaning on them and hitting them the right, and he's getting some hits. And when he gets that pitch where he can turn on it, you know, move those hips, he drills it.
well, I have to give credit to my whipping boy, Jacoby Ellsbury, who's really been playing well. He even decided it would be okay to hit a few home runs because before, apparently, Peter Gammon's the mouthpiece for the Red Sox organization, said that Ellsbury wasn't really focused on hitting home runs anymore. Okay, so he doesn't want to make a lot of money. He just wants to hit singles. I guess there's a lot of other players who don't want to hit home runs anymore either, like Andre Ethier and Matt Kemp on the Dodgers, who had a combined 10 so far this year, who were getting huge money.
I'll tell you one thing, Ellsbury, he keeps these stats up. He's making big money next year.
Yeah.
You're talking about you're talking around $20 million a year for like 6 years.
Well, if you look at the players, Miguel Cabrera is amazing.
Unbelievable. 30 home run today.
He is, his OPS is over 1,100. He's just crushing the ball. He had 90-something RBIs already. If you look at his statistics on a site like baseballreference.com, if he stopped playing tomorrow, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, that's how good he is. Chris Davis, I don't know what to make of him. We'll see what he does. I mean, Cabrera could win the Triple Crown again, 2 years in a row after not having a Triple Crown winner in baseball since 1967. I don't know if anybody's ever won the Triple Crown 2 years in a row.
I mean, Davis is going to be a great hitter for years. He just has that beautiful stance,
Yeah, he's got
beautiful swing. He's tall, strong, just drives the ball.
And then with the All-Star game coming up, I think probably the big moment of the game will be for Mariano Rivera. He's on his retirement swing. Yankees are playing with terrible injuries this season, but Rivera's been terrific all year long.
I was watching him last week. He blew his second save of the year.
Well, it happens.
But the night before against Baltimore, he's pitching great. Every cut fastball is really moving sharp, you know, got a good bend on it, getting it right where he wants to. The next day they pitch him. It's 94 degrees against Baltimore, and you could see him. He's struggling right from the beginning. His ball's not going where he wants it. It's kind of too bad. You're never going to take out your closer.
Well, Derek Jeter came back today after a 91-game absence, and I'm sure the Yankees were pleased to have him back. A real consummate professional. I'm not saying that he's the greatest role model in the world because he's got some off-the-field peculiarities, but he's overall been really good for the city of New York and baseball.
Yeah, he was 1 for 4 today, drove in a run, he DH'd. But, you know, he's going to add to the team. Just having him in the dugout's going to get the team up, you know, more into the games. And I'm more excited.
And we have late-breaking news. Oh, and Jeff tells us that Jeter leaves with a quadriceps soreness. You know, we have a word for that in medicine. It's called age.
I thought it was Gardner that left. It was him, too? Because Gardner left, too, with an injury.
The Yankees have just had terrible injuries. And they're a team that's probably going to have to need a pretty big makeover because, you know, a guy like, it's never a good sign for a guy like Teixeira to be out for a year. Jeter's getting pretty old. A lot of injuries.
I talked to a fellow Yankee fan today, matter of fact, up in Superior Court. He was the attorney that I had to go up there for a search warrant case. And he was examining me, and me and him are big Yankee fans. So before that, we were talking for about a half hour, and then after that, we were talking. He's disgusted with Cashman, too. He says, you're right. He goes, you were right years ago when you told me that Theo Epstein and Cashman are just about useless, and they're making all that money.
Well, it's like anything else. If you gave us each a couple $100 and said, go to the grocery store and get the best groceries you can for dinner, you know, we're not going to buy hamburgers. And people would say, wow, that filet mignon was really good. You made a good choice there.
Well, look at Cashman over the years. He's let some players, Ibanez, number one, but he let him go and he had a good year for him. A lot of big hits. You know, he couldn't sign him. He's 40, though, 41. But he's let a couple of other pretty good hitters go over the years. Look at who he's got on the team. I mean, with that payroll, he's got those players. I mean, Nick's playing a lot. Nunez, I don't mind. He's back from injury. He was out 60
Right.
days.
Well, Gardner's a pretty good player.
Yeah, he's good.
You know, I think
I like
Gardner's
Gardner.
comparable to Ellsbury. I mean, he's an excellent defender. I think he's a better defender than Ellsbury. And one of the things that I saw him talking about is Daniel Nava, when he got sent down to AAA, he didn't sulk. He worked on his game. So he threw every day, so his arm is decent. Now, maybe Ellsbury's working really hard to improve his throwing. I'm not seeing it. You know, or maybe the answer is for him is like, that's not the most important part of my game, so I don't really have to do that.
But no, these players must be looking at in the agents. They must be saying, you don't have to have great stats to make big money. You know, you just got to be one of the top players at your position, like Ellsbury.
Well, the other
You
day,
know?
you know, there's news stories that break, and Anna Benson, who was Chris Benson's wife, who was a model, got put in jail for, I don't know, I think it was a gun charge. So I said, well, I wonder what Chris Benson did. Now, he was a top draft choice, I think, of the Pirates, and
Yeah.
he's played on the Mets. He had a career, I think he was something like 70 and 75 over 7 or 8 years. He made $39 million. He's not even good, and you can make a fortune. Now,
Look at
not-
Victorino.
yeah, I don't, you know, it's not the high price of the stars that annoys me. It's the high price of mediocrity. I got,
They're
you know,
right.
guys on the Red Sox. Pedroia is a fantastic player. I mean, the guy's 5'6", and he's just out there killing himself every day. He's amazing. You know, he steals bases. He's a fabulous defender. He has over 50 RBIs.
And what's he making? Yeah, he's not
he's
even
right.
making $10 million, right?
Yeah, I think it's around that. But still, for baseball, that's chump change.
Oh yeah, Victorino's making 14. J.D. Drew's brother is making 9.
Right, and he's hardly ever even playing. You know,
It's
so-
just weird. And then, who's the guy? Is it the guy for the Angels who's making 400-something thousand? He was rookie of the year last. Trout.
Oh, Trout.
Trout.
Trout, you know, Trout's still one of the top 3 offensive players in the league with Davis
I would
and
play on my option.
Cabrera. Well, and he probably will. They won't even have enough money to pay the guy.
I would never ever, if I was his agent, his father, him, I would never ever sign with the Angels when it's time. You're telling me after the year he had last year to give him a $25,000 raise? Are you kidding me? I would say you're nuts. I said, don't ever think that he's going to sign with you guys when he's a free agent.
No.
Because you don't have a chance.
Well, it just doesn't make any sense.
The best player in baseball.
You know, if you have a valued employee, you want to show that they're a valued employee. Now, maybe behind the scenes, they're going out and saying, you know, we're going to get you every single endorsement you can get and so forth, but I doubt it. All right.
More info.
Here we go. We have player salaries from the Red Sox. Ryan Dempster's only making $13.25 million, and you know, he's given up over 20 home runs this year. Napoli is a bargain. Victorino's at 13. Lester's at 11.6. I think he's got $14 million option.
Well, it's
for
good to
next
see
year.
Pedroia's making 10 because I know when he signed, it was like 6 or 7 at the beginning.
So it's good to know that some of the Red Sox will be able to, you know, not have to eat hot dogs and hamburgers and beans for dinner. And poor Daniel Nava. Now, just to
He'll
say
get a
one thing
raise.
about, notice Jacoby Ellsbury was out for a couple days with a sore wrist. Jackie Bradley Jr. comes up, hits a home run, and then Ellsbury, like he went to Lourdes, the next day he's back in the lineup.
And where's Jackie Bradley? Did he go down? Did they send him?
No, they
just
haven't sent him back down yet.
Webster and Aceves went
Yeah,
down.
every time a guy pitches 3 innings, they send him back to the minors so they can get a fresh guy. But they're going to rely on the All-Star break to get healthy. Well, in the words of a United States Senator, Tom Harkin, I may be ignorant, but I'm not willfully so. I'm Ron Sen.
And I'm Ralph LaBella, and thank you for watching Let's Talk Sports.